Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Module 4. We are now more than halfway through the course, and I want to say thank you for coming along on this ride. I really hope you've had a lot of valuable insights from it. I got a lot of positive feedback on the last module. It seems like you guys are really gaining a lot out of this, so I'm really happy to hear that. Today's module is on mindsets. And like I said to you, we're making a shift in the course now. We really focus on practical tools in the first 3 modules, really about defending your calendar, the importance of deep work, how to connect your goals, how to deconstruct your goals. And now we're moving more into the psychology side of things. And the reason why this is important is because we are our own worst critic. We've all heard that. And what typically holds us back more than anything else is ourselves. And what I mean by that is this internal conversation inside our head, something that I've really wrestled with and has had, I'd say, one of the biggest limiting factors on me is just that I don't always believe myself. I don't have faith. I don't know if I can execute on things. And so it's important to be able to tackle that. And there's something I discovered about a year ago. It's called the owl brain versus the wow brain. It's a Todd Herman concept. And it's fundamentally shifted my life and how I perceive things, and I'm still working at it. But I understand what I need to be focusing on and what I have to do to really be able to achieve the goals that I have. And it's one of the simplest illustrations and breakdowns that I've come across, and that's why I really want to share it with you guys. I feel it's going to have a profound impact on maybe why you haven't achieved goals in the past, what's really held you up. And when you hear it, I hope it sets off a lot of lights and aha moments to really allow you to move forward with your goals. And so we're going to get into it. But yes, definitely the next few modules are going to be a little bit more on the psychology, mindset things. And this is a lighter module because we are at the halfway point. So I want to give people a chance to catch up on anything they might be missing, rewatch something, go back if they need to. So it's going to be a little bit shorter module today. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get right into it. So mindset. So part 1, owl brain versus wow brain. Like I said, this is a Todd Herman concept. This is straight from the 90-day year program. He's the guy who runs Peak Athlete. And so these are all his ideas. And I definitely want to give him credit for it because it's definitely wouldn't be fair to say it's my idea. So the owl brain, we all have it. There's the owl brain and there's the wow brain. Depending what part of our life we're at, we have one or the other. So it's not like you're just one or the other entirely. And typically what is, we focus on a lack of success when it comes to owl brain. We focus on the pain points, how difficult things are, how challenging they're going to be. And we're looking at more from the negative point of view, which results in stress, worry, and anxiety. And these actions are typically driven by pain. Now, one of the best ways to understand the owl brain is if we break it down into its feedback loop and really go through it one part after another. So the first part, I'm just going to move this up, is we begin by looking at our current results versus our ideal results. And so part of this, I can even go back to my podcast, right, where it's like the amount of downloads I have right now is not exactly how many I want to be. Like I'm not in the top 100 of podcasts in the world. And I've talked about this before where my goal is to be able to be a millionaire one day, drive an Aston Martin. And so if I really focus on that and I look at where I am today to where I want to be, I can see that there's a huge amount of distance that I have to cover, and it can be very daunting for me to potentially reach that goal. And what can happen is I can be in this place of criticism where I'm never going to get there, never going to be able to achieve that. And when we start looking at where we are today, our present moment against our ideal future moment, that creates a huge gap. And I've talked about this in my last modules where anything over 90 days is a vision, anything under 90 days is a project. And so if we're comparing our today against the future, that can create a lot of issues for us. And so when we go to the second part, that's where we start to have this self-talk, judgment, and criticism where we begin to wonder, can I really do that? Can I become a millionaire one day? Can I really drive an Aston Martin? Can I really have a top 100 podcast? And we begin to doubt ourselves. We have this judgment and this criticism, and we have this internal conversation that is not positive. It's not reinforcing for what we need to do. Now, this starts to create frustration, stress, low self-worth. We question our own self-esteem, our ability, whether we can do this or not. And when we have that, it doesn't create a very positive place for ourselves. And actually what it does is it creates an avoidance, procrastination, and time wasting. So the things we have to do to build a top 100 podcast and start moving in that direction, we don't do those actions anymore. And one of the best ways to explain this is that if we talk about losing weight, if my goal is to lose 100 pounds and I lose 10 pounds and then another 20 pounds and 30 pounds, I'm much more likely to continue with those actions, as opposed to if my goal is to lose 100 pounds, but nothing happens and I'm stuck at the same weight for a long period of time. And what this is called learned helplessness. If we're taking action on something, but we're not seeing any results, we're not moving forward, then what happens to us is our body stops doing that action because we're not getting the dopamine, the stimuli, the reinforcement that what we're doing is working. And this is why small wins are so critical. And I've talked about this in the course before, where we need to see incremental improvements and changes. If our goal is to lose 100 pounds, we need to see ourselves losing 10, 20, and we keep that momentum going, keep moving forward with it. If we don't do that, then our body stops because we don't believe it's going to work and we're wasting our time. And we have this owl mindset where it's like, it's painful, it's difficult, it's just not gonna, it's not meant for us. It's just not who we are. We weren't designed to do this, is what it comes down to. And so the owl brain is really, when we go to change, it's driven by pain. It's what it comes down to, the easiest way to summarize it all. So if we flip it over to the wow brain, these are parts of life that come easier to you. It's more pleasant, it's a little more enjoyable, but they're not any more pleasant than the other things. It's just how we experience them is in a more positive feedback loop where we give ourselves more encouragement, more support, and so we're more likely to keep going with them, and that momentum creates growth and movement. And so these people, their actions are driven by gain as opposed to pain. So if we look at the feedback loop for the wow brain, it starts off by, we look at our current results, but the biggest difference is we look at it against our past, where we've come from. So we understand what our baseline data is. You can even look at yourself. Where were you 3 weeks ago prior to where you started this course, to how much you've moved in 3 weeks. That is what the wow brain does. It looks back against our accomplishments versus against the future and what we're not doing and how we don't look or what we don't have, and that lack mindset. So it's really about standing and measuring your improvement and against your current results. This, when we look back at our past, creates more positive self-talk. Like, wow, I got this done. Now I'm moving forward with my public speaking course, or I have 3 personal training clients, or I know how to rig a video game character. We see the positive improvements in our lives and the steps that we're making. We're putting one foot in front of the other, and that creates a positive reinforcement. And so we start moving forward because we have motivation, we have confidence, we see progress, and this begins to develop more self-worth inside of ourselves. We feel better about what we're doing, we're rating, we have confidence, and this is how the wow brain works. It keeps moving forward in a cycle. And so this prompts action and momentum, and we're working towards our vision because we can see how the near term is connecting to the long term as we're seeing those small little wins, which are so critical to us being able to really move forward and believe, because that's really what it comes down to, believing that we can execute on our goals, that we can do what we have to do. Because if we don't have that belief in ourselves, then that wow brain doesn't go off. We focus on the owl brain, the pain. Oh, this is hard, I can't do this, I wasn't born for this, that kind of talking or mindset, which is really not the case. So it's really about looking at the wins that we've had and moving forward with that. And so the wow brain is really about change equals gain, and we moving in a forward positive way where we're gaining, we're seeing the improvements, we're seeing our results, and when we have that, we're way more likely to continue going forward. So life in the owl brain, these are some pop-up bubbles, is I don't feel like it. Oh, why didn't I just do it when I was supposed to? Looking at people that are more successful than you, better money, better looking, having more money, their parents are better off, they help them out more, they have better contacts, they're smarter. So it's really looking at things from this point of view that I don't have this, I don't have that, and it's really being a lot more negative, as opposed to if you look at the wow brain, when they speak, it's like, I can be successful because I control my actions, I get better each day, nobody can take away my effort. There's an amount of information out there. I'm coachable, I'm willing to learn. That might not work for me today, but now I know what not to do. And it's really like, oh, that person's successful. How do I follow in their footsteps? So we're able to really look at the positive and reinforce that, what we're capable of, and more optimistic, having a winner's mindset to really be able to move forward. And so if you break this down and you put the two brains side by side, we all have a starting point and we all make improvements and we're moving. And I actually get my laser out for this. Now, the key thing though is how we're comparing. And that's what Todd Herman calls in the owl brain. And the owl brain is here on the left side. And he calls it the chasm of despair. And so that's basically looking at where we're currently at to the future. And when we focus in on this area and what we desire, that's where we can have that pain, that inability, oh, we can't get this done. The goal's too big. I'm just never gonna be able to accomplish that. I just don't have the talent and ability. And so if we keep focusing on that, he calls it the chasm of despair, because we're never going to win. We're never gonna succeed. Just ow, ow, ow. It hurts, it's difficult, it's challenging. And that's all we see and then all we feel. But if we move over to the wow brain over here, what we're doing, and he calls it the value of confidence, we're actually looking back into the past of our baseline and what we've accomplished, and this is the value of confidence. And he says that's the biggest difference between people who succeed and they don't. And it's interesting. I've been paying attention to this basically the last year since I've come across this, and the people that are succeeding at business, they constantly talk about their little wins. They're in their present. They're talking about how successful they're doing, and like they're not bragging about it, but they're able to be positive what they're doing. While the people that are so critical, negative, it's like I see them, they're not having the same results. They're not winning as many battles. They're just not moving forward the way other people are. And so when you start looking at this and paying attention to it, you can see the people that are outbrainers and why they're having limited results, and the wow brains. And that's really been a huge reinforcement for me, where it's like, I need to shift my thinking, because I used to be such an outbrainer and focus on the negative and how much more I have to do. And it was never enough. I just want to do more and more and more. And I'd always focusing on what I hadn't done versus my accomplishments. And I'm still working on it. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I am definitely getting better. And that's where I'm at right now on my journey. But it's really about this wow brain of like being positive about what you've achieved and what you've done already. So I'm going to turn the laser off. And so what Todd Herman says is that typically we make this plan, we're like, oh, there's the goal, it's really easy to get there, right? But what we really don't do is we don't envision the setbacks that we're gonna have and how challenging it's gonna be, because there are gonna be difficult moments along the way. And when people hit those moments, that's where the outbrain kicks in, and we typically give up or quit at those points. So he says, more realistically, this is how the path to success looks like. And so let me just move this somewhere. And so you start off moving and you get some momentum, but you can see there's valleys here, right? Where basically there's problems that we encounter. Here there's some rocks, right? And it's like, it never goes as we plan at start. And then over here, like, there's another thing we didn't foresee. And so he has a gondola taking us across that. And then there's forces of your control, but it keeps talking about these ideas where there's going to be valleys along the way. There's going to be things that challenge us, and we're going to come up against resistance and things that really make you question whether this is what you want to do and whether it's meant for you. But that's really just your owl brain talking. And that's what he says, that too many people take these tough moments literally and they quit at those moments, as opposed to just looking back at everything they've accomplished and done and keep moving forward, because you're going to encounter setbacks and roadblocks along the way. And that's the natural part of doing anything. And so when a kid learns to walk, they fall so many times, but it's not about stopping and being, I'm not going to walk. It's just like, it's about moving through those obstacles. And as long as you're making progress and getting through it and focus on that, wow, this is where I've come from, then you're going to be much more likely to stick with what you're doing. So the owl brain has three stories that it keeps telling itself. It's stuck, it's bored, and it's safe. And these are the things that keep us in the exact same place again and again, because whatever we do, we feel comfortable, we feel like we're stuck a little bit, or bored, and it's just the kind of our rut or pattern that we're running again and again. Now on the flip side, that wow brain has three very different stories. It's focused on growth, it's focused on confidence, and it's focused on adventure. Because when we're looking at what we've done, what we've achieved, we're like, wow, I've grown so much. It's like, and you start feeling that confidence. You're like, wow, this is how I've come along. It's like, for me, I have 33 podcasts out now. Like, my fan base is growing. More people are subscribing. And when you have that, it's really positive. You get that reinforcement. And now you're on this adventure of like, well, wow, where can I take this? I have a course now. Like, I'm getting some momentum and traction. It's like, what can I do to really keep this story going? and shifting it and evolving it and keeping those wins happening. And so if we combine these stories into circles, airplane mode does not prevent alarms from going off, I'll tell you that. So apologies for that. So if we combine these stories into circles, so what we have is growth meeting confidence. If you put these two together, is what we have is momentum. And when you get momentum, the opposite of that is stuck. And so you can see how there's a direct comparison against the owl brain versus the wow brain. If the owl brain is like, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do, it's because we're not embracing growth and we're not gaining that momentum to really be able to move forward in our lives. And same thing, if you combine adventure with confidence, that becomes excitement. And what is the opposite of excitement? Well, it's bored. Because if we're bored, we don't have anything exciting going on in our lives. And so we need to embrace adventure and confidence into our lives to start creating some excitement. And then when we do growth and adventure, that leads to transformation. And that is the exact opposite of being stuck. So you can see how these stories that the wow brain has are in direct contrast to the owl brain. And so we fundamentally always have a choice of like, do we want to stay in the current situation we are, be stuck, complacent, or do we want to grow, experience new adventure, and gain some momentum to really start moving forward in the direction that we want? And if we embrace these new stories, then we're able to really look at our past wins, where we've come from, what we're doing, and understand that we're on this journey and that little by little, things are happening for us. And this is such a critical mindset, like I said, that's had a big impact on me, because it's really about being positive and reinforcing the actions that you're taking versus being critical and negative on them. And so that wraps up the owl brain versus wow brain. So I hope that resonates with you and you can learn a bit from that. It does go back to basically having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset and being able to focus on what you're moving, going towards, versus being stuck in the same place. So here are some other additional mindsets that I feel are valuable and have really helped me when I'm in a rut or don't know how to move forward or I'm in my head a lot, that have really helped me to get moving forward. And so the first one is breaking things. And so this is very much Silicon Valley mindset, where you want to break things as much as possible. And the idea is that if we are not moving fast enough, then we're not taking enough risks, not enough chances, and we're just not moving forward. And so a lot of you don't know this, but basically I ran one of the businesses I tried before this was I built a fashion website with a buddy. We wrote an ebook. And we're going to create this whole fashion consulting company. And I always told them, I'm like, the goal of this is like, we either really want to succeed this and get to a point where we can live off it, or we want to break it, run it into the ground. And he never quite got this. But for me, it's like, we're at a young age. We don't have a lot to risk here. It's like, we want to go one way or the other and as fast as possible, because if we can either prove our idea wrong as quickly as we can, then that's going to be, we know we can move on to the next thing, or we succeed and we can start moving forward with it. And I'm always the same thing with my podcast, my business right now. That's a part of this course, because I really want to look at monetizing. It's like, how do I disprove what I'm doing? How do I make sure, like, if this is not working for me, it's not a feasible business model, I can make a living off it, then I want to find that as quick as possible. I don't want to waste any time. And one place where I heard this, it's the Google X Lab. I watched a TED Talk last year, and I don't know if it's actually out because it was a live stream of the talk. But basically, at Google X Labs, the way it works is they have an idea and they're trying to break it. I'm recording right now. They break it. And sorry, I lost my train of thought. Someone's at the north. But basically, what they have to do is they get a reward every single time that the project they're working on, they disprove it. They find a way that it doesn't work anymore. And so the example they gave there's a quote that I want to get in here with. If failure isn't a significant outcome, if it doesn't happen at least half the time, we aren't shooting big enough. And so what Google's working on right now, one of the biggest projects, Google X Labs, is actually these weather balloons that have internet signals, because they want to have internet access all over the world. And so the first thing was basically, can they get a weather balloon to communicate to a computer on the ground? And then when they saw they could do that, they're like, well, can that communicate to a smartphone? And they did that. And so they kept trying to find ways to disprove this idea and break this idea. And they're like, well, now this weather balloon, we have to be able to move it to specific areas on, the world to be able to know that we can get the signal to certain places again and again. And so they basically set out, can they control the weather balloon to like a very specific XY coordinate on the globe, so a certain height, altitude, and get to a certain place. And they were able to do that. And they keep trying to find ways to break this idea of basically having weather balloons rotating the earth at all times, where they would provide internet signals to people like in the Himalayas that don't have internet access right now, but would get them from these weather balloons. But the idea is they'd almost be orbiting like satellites, where there'd be continuous Wi-Fi everywhere. And then you could eventually do this, like, apply this to the whole world, even in areas that have Wi-Fi. And so, but that's the thing. And so they haven't found a way to break this idea of kind of like communicating, basically bringing internet to the whole world via weather balloons. And that's where they're at with it right now. And so that's the idea, is like you're always looking for ways to break the idea, break the concept, because you don't want to spend time on something that's not serving you or ultimately getting you to where you want to go. So it's about having this mindset of, there's almost a reward when you get to the point where your project doesn't work anymore, because you can move on to the next thing and you can learn from that and keep moving forward, is what it comes down to. So another mindset that's really worked for me is get out of your head and in action. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about things and psychoanalyzing it. And even if we go back to last time about breaking things, it's really giving yourself permission to take risks and do things that necessarily, your mind might not feel comfortable doing. And so if we spend a lot of time thinking about, is this going to work? Is that going to work? Like, we don't know unless we do, unless we put it out there. And that's really the big thing. And so getting out of your head and taking action is exactly that, is being willing to break things, being able to put yourself out there and testing things out 2 or 3 times, seeing what kind of feedback you get and how it's working. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, we're moving on to the next thing. And that's how we learn. That's how we get better. And the only way we're going to be able to succeed is getting out of our head and taking action. Sign your name on it. This is something that I feel is not talked about, and it's basically being proud of what you create. And so signing your name on it is, every artist, painter would sign their name in the corner of a painting. And the way that it looks is that you're proud of the work that you've created. And so I don't think we spend enough time talking about pride in today. Whenever I put something out, I ask myself, would I sign my name on this? Is this something that I'm proud about? And if I'm not proud about what I'm putting out, then I don't put it out there. Whether it gets a lot of likes or engagements, that doesn't really matter to me. It's more about, is this a reflection of who I am and where I'm at? And do I feel it's helping people and serving people? And if I'm proud of that, it aligns with my values and who I am and what I do, then I am willing to put it out there. And it's just about ensuring quality and making sure that, because no artist puts out shit work out there. It's just like, the idea is like you sign things that you're proud about, you've put in your full effort, you've done your best. And if you can do that, then the rest is just left for people to interpret. You can't really do much more than that. If you're willing to sign your name on it, you're proud of your work, then let people see whether they like it or not. Go out there, break things, see the response that you get, and that's the key thing. And experimental mindset, this ties in with breaking things. Basically, just be willing to experiment things. Like, even I have a podcast right now where I'm doing short 5-minute things. I've started doing 4 or 5-minute blurbs of me just giving mindsets and lessons that I've learned along the way. And I'm always playing with new things on the podcast. Yeah, my full feature, episode that comes out on the weekends, basically Sunday. And from there, I have other things that really allow me to just to be able to, like the short podcast, putting that out and really being able to play around different things to really be able to see what's working, what's not. And when we have this experimental mindset, that really allows us to flow and be much more connected with what we need to do. So I want to wrap up with the exercises here for this week. What I would love you guys to do, there's an interview with Todd Herman and Marie Forleo, and it's on YouTube. And just, you don't have to watch the whole thing. It's only about 25 minutes, but I definitely recommend you watch from 1 minute 37 to 11 minutes and 4 seconds, where Todd Herman really talks about the wow brain versus the owl brain. He also talks about the biology of change, what's happening at the cellular level. I didn't get into that because I would butcher it completely, but he does a great job of talking about this. And he gives his own interpretation of the owl brain, wow brain, very much in line with what I talked about, because obviously it's this concept, but it is coming from the horse's mouth. And so I would recommend you checking that out. I would ask that you continue doing your self-time audit. Pick one day this week where you can track your times being spent. And 3, do a 20-minute reflection where you answer the following 5 questions. Where in your life do you have an owl brain mindset? before in your life? Do you have a wow brain mindset? Why does one aspect come easier to you than the other? What was the baseline data when you started this course? Where did you start? And what progress have you made in the last 3 weeks? And really start conditioning yourself to start looking things through the wow brain. And so here are the resources for this week. And so that is it. Thank you for checking out this presentation. And that wraps up module 4.